Over the years, the draw for most avid divers and underwater image makers has been travel to the farthest and most remote locations possible. Seek out the unique and rare species found in those locations, and then marvel and reminisce about the agony of the 20-plus hour flights, the tiny island hopper planes, and often dugout canoes needed to get to these locations, not to mention the issues with baggage. Well, as it turns out, there's a place so unique and ideal that within a 30-mile radius, divers can find all those wild creatures, big pelagic species and rare invertebrates, and of all locations, this destination is right here in the good old USA. It's a place called Florida. And to be more specific, the towns of West Palm Beach and Riviera Beach, where visitors will find the Rec Trek Corridor and the Blue Heron Bridge, both within 3 exits of each other and less than a half-an-hour drive between them. If you're into large animals like sharks and Goliath groupers, then West Palm is the place amongst the artificial reefs of the Rec Corridor, and doing so aboard the Pro 48 dive boat Narcosis, owned and operated by Van Blakeman. Narcosis departs from the 13th Street Marina each day, and Blakeman's skills judging currents and the conditions of this region mean dropping divers on a series of wrecks that are the congregation points for schools of jacks, numerous sharks, turtles, rays, and in late summer, the yearly aggregation of Goliath groupers that come to this region to spawn. Van Blakeman.
These are all drift dives here in Palm Beach County. We usually have a current typically to the north. We drop divers in, an hour later we go try to find them all.
Once again, Van Blakeman.
We have wrecks and reefs right within a mile offshore. We're in 60, 70 feet of water. We got fabulous reefs. It's probably the littlest known dive location in the world. It's world class.
When diving these amazing drifts, rated in the top 10 around the world, it's also important to do so under the watchful eye of local dive professionals. And there is no better operation for this than Force E Divers. Their community outreach coordinator Nicole Ordway and instructor Mark Kosarin, who are also aspiring underwater photographers. Arriving in early September, I chose to plan my dive schedule to allow diving both areas each day. For Blue Heron Bridge, that means during the late incoming and slack tide in early morning, late afternoon, or night, and scheduling the boat dives in between. Now, doing this from a distance in an unfamiliar area could be a daunting task with researching tide charts and boat schedules. But Nicole was the perfect foil, and a week before my arrival, I had a complete schedule already laid out for me, and all I had to do was show up, dive, and shoot, shoot, shoot. Nicole Ordway.
I would say that Palm Beach County has a really amazing drift diving community because of the fact that you don't have to anchor up and use your navigational skills to really get yourself to and from on these reefs. So what's great is that you can get down there and you can just follow that and not have to worry too much about where you're navigating to, and you can find the areas of interest when you're diving. What I mean by drift diving is that you're going to go into the water negative, and you're going to try and get yourself down as quickly as possible so that you can get out of that surface current and you can drift along the reefs.
From day one, my main objectives were macro images at Blue Heron Bridge and Goliath groupers in the open ocean. Arriving in West Palm at noon meant I was able to do my first Blue Heron Bridge dive that same day, and teaming with Ordway, I was able to capture a diverse list of species from hermit crabs and red-lipped batfish to seahorses and mantis shrimp. On day 2, I teamed with Mark Kosarin aboard Narcosis, and we headed to 2 wrecks 15 minutes outside of the harbor, and Van dropped us right on top of each, and the show began. Mark Kosarin.
Big draw, and lately with the divers, is Goliath grouper. It's their annual aggregation that they have every season. You can come across 25 to 50 Goliath grouper in one dive. It's amazing.
As with most predatory species, groupers congregate at specific times of the year to spawn, And in Florida, that happens in August and September. These extremely passive Goliaths, ranging in size from 250 to 700 pounds, wait till the moon is right, and then females turn an off-white, signaling they are ready, willing, and able.
The females are usually spawning all their eggs. The males are out there trying to get lucky, if you could say. And it's just jaw-dropping.
What's best in Florida is that the man-made reefs provide both a location for the spawning ritual and interesting habitats for divers to explore and fish to thrive. Since the waters are also tropical, these reefs are covered with sponges, corals, and all forms of invertebrate species. And so it begins. The seas are rough, the sky gray and exploding with rain. Positioned at the transom, barely able to stand, we wait for the signal. Van's voice booms from the PA. Dive, dive, dive. And before the sound is over, the ocean surrounds us and we kick for the bottom. The current is strong and a voice in my brain is telling me I'm going to miss the wreck, but I continue, clearing my ears, kicking, and at about 60 feet, the shape begins to form, and as I hit the sand at 75 feet, I see a deformed bow, the result of a collision with another vessel. I scan my surroundings and see other divers approaching as well, and when I turn again, they appear from the gloom. At first dark forms, but as they approach, the leader signals me, wiggling its head. Is it a warning or greeting? Hopefully the latter is true. Following them below deck, through narrow passageways and bulkheads, I immerse myself in their world. They could care less that I'm there, and their lives evolve around me as I succumb to their rhythm. What are they thinking? Why do they ignore me? This alien creature in their world. I'm slapped back into reality by a tail the size of my entire body, and a figure emerges through a swirling school of baitfish. Follow me, she beckons, and of course I do. Mark wrangles, and I capture this world within the rusting steel and blazing colors of the life it supports. Van Blakeman.
Our fishing industry lobbies so hard, and the dive industry presents hardly any case at all for saving these animals. And the science that the fishing industry uses is not always valid science. It's kind of skewed to their needs. So we have an area that we monitor that was an artificial reef, and it's probably 4 foot in elevation lower than it was, and it hasn't sunk. It's just that the sand has increased about 4 feet in that area offshore due to the beach renourishment. So it's a constant battle. I always try to tell people these are not our reefs. No more than the Grand Canyon belongs to Nevada. We have to realize that this belongs to everybody in the United States and in the world. We're just passing through, and it doesn't belong to us. We don't have the rights to completely desecrate any environment that we run across. It's not Florida's. It doesn't belong to Palm Beach County. It belongs to everybody.
While diving the wrecks is deep and challenging, Blue Heron Bridge is an entirely different environment and experience altogether. To begin with, the maximum depth at high tide is about 25 feet, so bottom time can be as long as 2 hours, if your air lasts that long. And even with the incoming tide, the current, though strong, is workable. From 4C Divers store, the drive takes about 2 minutes. You pull into the parking lot, set up your gear, and walk into the water. Simple as that. It's so simple, in fact, that it doesn't seem possible, yet it is.
What's great about the Blue Heron Bridge is one of the top 10 diving destinations in the world, according to a couple of different magazines and books. And the reason that is the top 10 is it's a great way to get in the water and do a shore dive. And the substrate here at this particular site is a muddy, sandy substrate, which allows a lot of animals that we would never see on the reefs to come here and live and grow up and maybe return out to the sea. You get lots of bottom time, get lots of unique critters, and also it's a great way to show people different topographies that South Florida offers.
By day or night, this site is inexhaustible, and the regular crowd of divers that frequent it are so friendly it's impossible not to get images that boggle the mind. A prolific muck dive, and in Florida, not Lembe or Anilao, and less than 100 feet off the causeway that crosses it. Even more amazing about Blue Heron is that you'll find critters you've never seen before, and after more than 40 years of diving, I thought this was only possible on journeys to the other side of the world. Just how unusual is this sight? Well, the first fish I encountered was a red-lipped batfish, a species I had never seen outside of the Caribbean or Southeast Asia. Then there were hundreds of skeleton shrimp, nudibranchs, Pacific-type hermit crabs, and scorpionfish, as well as several species of decorator crabs and scallops with active barnacles feeding in my lights. At one point, an adult drum, normally very evasive, swam directly toward me to pose. Next, blue and white starfish I've never seen before, and one that was bright orange. There were rock crabs hiding in plain sight, and peacock flounder blending with the sand. Guiding me on my night dive, the queen of Blue Heron, Susan Meldonian, led me to a site called The Pillars, where the macro life was so numerous we continuously shot for nearly 2 hours, never having to move more than 20 feet. Even lazy frogfish sat out in the open, waiting for their turn to be filmed. Speaking of seahorses, there were 3 different colors on this one dive: yellow, brown, and pink. Blennies, wrasse, filefish, juvenile angels, and the list goes on and on.
On the hour in which I die.
Goliath groupers were fished to near extinction, and only a ban on their capture prevented the catastrophe. Again, Nicole Ordway.
Goliath groupers were actually wiped out. They're critically endangered in the Caribbean and Florida waters. So back in the 80s is when the commercial and recreational fishing declined them to almost 1% of the population was left. So they put a ban on the take of Goliath groupers, and it has worked. We've been seeing lots of numbers of these groupers coming back. However, the animals that we're seeing are not actually adults, they're actually subadults. The ages 10 to 15 years. They only become adults at age 35. So why that is important to not open up these bans is that we don't have true adults here in the Palm Beach area. So again, it's really critical that we protect these creatures because they're not coming back from their critically endangered status quite yet.
They became endangered. FWC and NOAA, the Fisheries Commission, put them on an endangered species list, put them on a no-kill, and the populations came back. They'll travel 50 miles in one direction to go to an area to spawn, and this is one of the areas where they'll come and they'll spawn. So we see a large aggregation of them now during this spawning cycle. My worry is that because there's so many of them during the spawn and in certain areas, that the fishing industry is now considering taking them off the endangered species list. But other areas like Cancun and the Virgin Islands, they're looking to try to find a way to propagate the species in their area because they're such a draw for divers. And we have a lot of them here, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of them in the world. And if we take them off of the endangered species list right now, we're going to be in serious trouble. We have none of them that are older than about 15 years old because that whole 15 to 25-year-old age bracket is gone. And if we go ahead and open it now and let them start killing them off, they're going to kill another age group, another bracket, and we're going to have even more problems.
If these fish are juveniles, can you imagine how big an adult can get if allowed to mature?
I would say not as many as I've seen in the past. If you read a lot of articles, they quote people seeing as many as 50 on a dive. I think the last dive that I did a few days ago with you, Rick, was maybe 25 or 30. on the actual Mitzvah shipwreck up here off the coast in Palm Beach. It could have been hit or miss that day, but it didn't seem like there were as many, but there were definitely a lot.
How do you protect them? Well, it's real easy. Get involved. We have a lot of people in this area that are working on the grouper research, or you can come and learn from us, 4C. We have plenty of programs that are going on during this time, either lectures or dives, so that you can come out and learn about the biology and the conservation of this particular fish. One great way to help out with these fish is to observe them underwater. Scientists are usually only in the water a couple of times a month, but we're in the water all the time. So what we can do is observe the behavior of the animal, the color patterns of the animal. They actually have on their tails, it's like a human thumbprint. They have a different spot pattern and bar pattern for each particular animal. So if you could take a snapshot or a photo or video of that tail, you can use that as that ID for that animal. You can also help with the scientists by recording any animals that you're seeing that are tagged. They have tags up on their fins that have usually a 3 or 4-digit number. And if you can get close enough without disturbing or rushing onto the fish, you'll actually be able to get that number and write it on your dive slate and actually record it, give it to some of these researchers so they know that that animal is staying in that area, or if it's moved on and moved to another site. What's great about the Blue Heron Bridge is if it's too rough to get out in the ocean, you usually are going to have really great conditions at the Blue Heron Bridge dive site. Because it's so shallow and it has a nice tidal flow, you'll get good visibility at the high tides. And what happens as a photographer or videographer is that it gives you a window of about 2.5 hours to get really clear images. You can stay at one particular animal and it's not going to move too much because it's an animal that usually doesn't swim away from you like things in the ocean do. Things like seahorses, octopus, nudibranchs. We also have red-lipped batfish, and we have flying gurnards, all types of really interesting creatures that are really great subjects to shoot. And also it allows you to use your sunlight. Instead of using strobes, if you like that type of photography, you can use the sun rays that penetrate because it's such a shallow site. We also do Blue Heron Bridge night dives. 4C hosts these once or twice a month. And that's another great way to get some good night footage and behavior of animals that you would never probably have seen. So for photography and videography, this has become one of the most popular spots, not just for Palm Beach County, but for people coming all around the world to dive at, because they'll get behaviors that people have never seen before.
Truly, these are some of the most incredible dives to experience anywhere in the United States.